Centuries ago, in my village of Domremy, my ancestors lived in fear. The English had come to conquer our land. They stole our animals and set fire to our crops. All but one of my people lost hope, and she was but a child.
I do not fear their soldiers. It is God's will to deliver the people of France from the calamity that is upon them. In Domremy, it had been prophesied that a maid would come from near that wood to do wonderful things. But I said I had no faith in that.
The girl you have come to know as Joan of Arc, my ancestors knew as the peasant Jeanne of Domremy. No one could have imagined that she would become our people's champion and change the course of history.
Joan was a peasant who tended her father's flock. She couldn't read. She had no book learning. She just knew 2, maybe 3 prayers. She was very simple, but she was obviously very smart.
Inside this ordinary girl lay the seeds of something extraordinary. A willingness to surrender to forces much larger and more powerful than she. Joan was born a child of war, into a world of suffering. For much of the 100 Years' War, the English occupied our lands and set us against each other. The Burgundians were the first to turn against their fellow Frenchmen. Siding with the English, they ruled the north of France. As the English sword descended, France disintegrated into anarchy and civil war. Domremy lay at the heart of this divided nation.
When the system has to change, when the social order itself is on the verge of changing, the vehicle of that is often a woman. Because women are outside the social system. Somebody who comes out of nowhere to strike against the corruption of power.
Medieval people believed that there was a parallel realm to reality, which you can call the divine, which was constantly there and which could open itself up at any time.
When I was 13, I had a voice from God. The voice came to me about noon. It was summer, and I was in my father's garden. The first time, I was terrified. It told me that I must be a good child, and God would help me.
The voice of God speaks through a person as the Spirit moves. Then the Spirit will move where it will.
I did not speak of my visions. I was afraid to let them be known.
It's very easy for us today to say she was schizophrenic. But when you get schizophrenia, unless you're medicated, you cease the ability to function gradually.
Joan was focused, clear. She did not have a disintegrated personality. She did not have self-destructive behaviors.
I don't think it's hard for any of us to imagine some voice within us telling us you can accomplish a lot more than you think you can. This is not some product of mental illness or schizophrenia.
Today, in our world, we want not to believe that it could be something supernatural. We're very frightened of believing in things because we've been so betrayed.
It was, however, an accepted part of the medieval religious experience. Not everyone was honored with the voices that come from God, but everyone could believe that someone else might be.
The name they often called me was Jean the Maid, child of God. When I hear those voices, I feel a great joy.
How extraordinary it must be to talk to voices that make you as happy as her voices made her. They're coming to see her every day. She talks about the amazing joy they give her. This sense of being extraordinary.
Indeed, I would that I might ever be in that state.
But over the months and years that followed, Joan's voices asked more of her than piety and virtue.
The voices demanded of Joan that she do something about the occupation of the English, that she'd become a warrior and bring together the French army.
I answered the voice that I was a poor girl who knew nothing of riding and warfare.
The more she listens, the more she grew to trust the voices. We don't have to accept our challenges. We can say no. And that's why when people say yes and step up to the challenge, it becomes an amazing thing.
Twice and thrice a week, the voice told me that I must depart. I feared my father would prevent me from starting on my journey.
When the Burgundians again attacked our village of Domremy, Joan knew that the time had come at last to obey her voices.
Ma fille, vite, cache-toi.
Viens, ma fille, cachons-nous.
Fais attention.
Since God had commanded me to go, I must do it. Had I 100 fathers and 100 mothers, I would have gone.
Joan simply walked out into the world and announced that God had told her that she and only she could save France.
To defend herself in this new world of men, Joan adopted the guise of a peasant boy. Her life as a soldier had begun.
Joan's journey away from Domremy is like the traditional journey of the hero. She has this idea that there is something called France that has to be defended. The idea that there is a country called France, this is a new idea. Great people are like weather vanes. They bring in what's in the atmosphere and coalesce it in themselves.
Joan's courage began to draw to her side men who had given up all hope of deliverance. Together they rode for 11 days through enemy territory to seek the court of France. The kingdom was in chaos. The city of Orléans was under siege. Our king was dead, and his son and heir, the Dauphin Charles, was on the run, hiding in a chateau instead of fighting for the crown.
He was detached, not terribly good looking, and very cool. He does not come across as an endearing figure, sometimes a pathetic figure.
He was weak, self-centered, spoiled, and spending most of his time feeling sorry for himself.
There were rumors, started by his own mother, that Charles was not the king's son at all. If he was illegitimate, then he had no true claim to the throne of France. But Joan lived in a world far removed from the corruption of the court of France. When Charles learned of this innocent peasant girl who claimed she'd been sent to make him king, he granted her an audience.
She must have been in awe of these people. These are the people with power.
Why would a king listen to a peasant, even a smart peasant?
Everything is stacked against her.
She went straight to the king and knelt before him.
Gentil Dauphin, I am called Jean the Maid. I bring you news from God that our Lord will give you back your kingdom.
To have this young shepherdess girl from the fringes of the French kingdom come and immediately recognize Charles as the legitimate king, what that represented was that she was an emissary of God, and God was recognizing him as the legitimate heir to the French throne.
She understands what's worrying him, his legitimacy. And so she responds to that right away. She says, I have been sent to proclaim you legitimate, to deliver Orléans, and to crown you king as you so rightly deserve.
Set me bravely to work, and I will raise the siege of Orléans.
By now the English had almost surrounded Orléans. If they battered down its gates, the rest of France would fall. The Dauphin was running out of options. But before he would accept Joan as God's messenger, he demanded that she give him a sign.
The two of them retired for a private conversation. Something happened there, and Charles would never speak about what it was, and neither would Joan.
Charles, who at this point is having a huge crisis, he's despondent. And this peasant girl comes. Imagine saying, I'm the one who will save your country and die for you.
How did she convince, at a time when women had no rights, whatever, the king to give her a complete army? These things cannot be easily explained. Mystery precisely was part of her strength.
Charles could not risk sending Joan to war without the support of the church. After deliberating for 3 weeks, the church deemed her mission holy. And our nobles began to seek out this 17-year-old peasant girl.
The Duc d'Alençon comes to Chinon and immediately goes to his cousin, the Dauphin, and asks to be taken to Joan. He had heard of this young woman who had appeared on the scene and was curious to see Charles's new pet.
Je comprends maintenant.
Alençon was the only one of the military dukes to believe in her right away.
Calling him her beau duc, her handsome duke, Joan urged Alençon to join her cause.
She changes his life immediately, and he becomes a very, very close friend from then on.
Envoyez-moi à Orléans. Je suis né pour cela.
Send me to Orléans. I was born for this.
Before she set off for Orléans, Charles signified his belief in Joan as a warrior by presenting her with a suit of armor.
Charles expects her now to do things that had never been done before, to lead an army, to lead men that were unused to being led by a woman.
I had a banner made. The field of it was sown with lilies, and therein was our Lord. I loved that banner 40 times more than my sword.
There was a spirit in the French just below the surface that was waiting to be awakened, waiting for some heroic figure to raise them up.
We shall raise such a battle cry as has not been heard in France in 1,000 years.
The English siege of Orléans was in its 6th month. The enemy had closed off every gate but one. The people of Orléans were starving for food, for hope.
There really was a culture of defeat, kind of a psychology of defeat among the French.
They kept on losing and kept on losing. Joan's role is to tell them they will win, to give them the courage to fight.
The news of her arrival at Orléans seems to have spread very quickly. She is greeted as a living saint. People want to be in her presence. They want just to come close to her, to touch her.
My Lord has sent me to succor this good town of Orléans. Hope in God, and you shall be delivered from your enemies.
The English had captured the Tourelle, Orléans' most important fortification. Joan declared she would break the siege by retaking the Tourelle. The English seemed so invincible that our generals thought her plan was suicidal, but not our soldiers.
The soldiers bought the idea that she was sent from God. They believed her. On the other hand, the generals who were around her were not swayed in the least in the beginning.
Both the Duke of Alençon and Dunois disagree with her at different points about strategy.
There were several arguments about who was calling the shots. The general in charge said, I am running things here, not you, and you have no clue about war. Let me do this.
She's always quick to point out, my counsel is from heaven above. My voices are saying, this is it. We must do it now.
Keep close to me all day, for my voices tell me, tomorrow, blood will flow from my body.
Joan's voices were very specific, but this specificity was what also enabled Joan to be the only mystic to actually be able to exert an effect on her society and history. Other mystics heard voices, had revelations, but they didn't really change the world militarily the way Joan did.
time to act is ripe. Watch! When you see the wind blow my banner against the bulwark, this place will be yours!
Badly wounded by an English arrow, Joan was carried off the field. Our enemy rejoiced that they had killed her. The arrow penetrated 6 inches, but it is said that she pulled it out herself. Seeing her return to the fray like a ghost terrified the English.
Once she won Orleans, the English realized this wasn't any little girl mascot. She was no camp follower, she was no deranged little girl. She was a serious threat.
The English were terrified of her, and when they would see her coming, they would flee.
They think they're dealing with some kind of witch, some kind of diabolical power that their own arms can't possibly defeat.
Next, she and her captains took the town of Jargeau, then Meung, then Beaugency. After losing the Battle of Patay, the English fled to Paris, abandoning our sacred city of Reims. All of our kings had been crowned in Reims since the 11th century. Joan understood that until Charles was anointed by the Church, our countrymen would doubt his divine right to rule.
The coronation of Charles is Joan's shining moment. It rights what was wrong. Divine right of kings is put back in order. The person who was supposed to be on the throne is put on the throne. But when Joan sponsors and blesses his coronation and makes it clear that it's thanks to her, we begin to see from that moment Charles pulling away from Joan.
The coronation seems to have changed matters between Charles and Joan. It seems to have put a gap between the two of them.
In nomine Patris et Filii. Not necessarily because she's changed at all, but because he's gotten what he wanted. He has gotten to be crowned king, and she is still around.
The coronation is both the triumph of Joan and also the beginning of her downfall.
In less than 5 months, Joan had left our village of Domremy, won over our Dauphin, led his army to victory, and seen him crowned king. Now the time had come to get rid of the English for good.
Get your men ready, and the other captains too. I want a closer view of Paris than I've yet had.
But Charles had other plans. Over Joan's objections, he decided to try to regain Paris through diplomacy. To keep Joan out of sight, he ordered her back to his court.
I think he's jealous. She gets all the attention, all the adulation. No one pays any attention to him. Kings had no authority over her. Judges, priests had no authority over her.
Joan has begun to beat the drums again.
Her voices have told her what to do, and she's going to do that.
She gathered her own men loyal to her and went to attack Paris. And it was downhill from there on for her.
The attack on Paris was a disaster. The reluctant Charles gave Joan too few troops. She lost the very first battle. After Joan was wounded, she learned that Charles had betrayed her. He burned her most strategic bridge and sounded a retreat.
Paris is big. Nobody can take Paris after a day of fighting. But after she is wounded, and after just the first day of a major campaign, Charles retreated to the Loire, taking the army with him.
It was as though a spell had been broken. No longer invincible, she lost her soldiers' confidence. Within weeks of her defeat, Charles had disbanded her army. When Alençon left for Normandy to fight the English, Charles forbade Joan to go with him.
Alençon and Joan had to part ways. They had developed a joint leadership, a level of trust, respect that Alençon had come to depend upon.
She would never see her Beau-Duc again. He departed before Joan could tell him of the fearful tidings her voices now brought her.
They told me that I would be taken prisoner, and that I must not be frightened, but accept it willingly, and God would help me.
She has no choice. She has to go on. She must find what her voices want her to do. She's trying to listen. She's trying to get a sign from them what's to happen.
Without Charles's blessing, without her best troops, and without her Beau-Duc Alençon, Joan answered a call to save the fortified town of Compiègne from the Burgundians.
It's a foolish endeavor. She has too few troops.
All of a sudden, boom, the gates are closed in front of her. There she is, surrounded by these men. She is now absolutely vulnerable. It must have been terrifying.
It's an easy capture for the Burgundians, who immediately recognize the prize that they have.
Joan was imprisoned in a 66-foot tower. For 6 long months she waited for Charles to ransom her from the Burgundians. The offer never came. She knew this meant she would be sold to the English.
She wanted very badly to escape. And she says her voices told her not to jump.
I begged of my voices that when I should be taken, I might die straight away. I thought death would be better than to be in their hands, who were my enemies.
patience and in her rashness. Joan even goes against the counsel of her voices.
Messenger, then Charles' coronation must have been the devil's work. They chose for her inquisitor the ambitious and powerful Bishop Pierre Cauchon.
Pierre Cauchon was on the English side, so he was a Burgundian. And he received money directly from the English crown to conduct the trial.
This trial is meant to convince the people that she is not the virgin warrior, but a witch.
Witch, harlot,
A blasphemer, a heretic.
She's a sinner.
And an idolatress.
Her voices are from the devil.
She is not from God. She's just a woman.
They have to prove to the world that she's not the real thing. Cauchon was pretty sure that this illiterate country bumpkin would be easy prey.
She comes in there with this sense of things are going to end up well for her. She feels that God is on her side and not on the side of the clerics who are trying her.
Her inquisitors commanded Joan to swear on the Bible that she would answer them truthfully.
No. The revelations which have come to me from God, I have never told or revealed to anyone, except to Charles, my king.
She never swore. Day after day became a whole ordeal. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and she says no. Just brazenly.
Forced to accept her conditional oath in order to proceed with the trial, the clerics questioned Joan about her masculine attire, her prayers, and most importantly, her voices.
Did you hear the voice in this room on Saturday?
That has nothing to do with your trial.
Joan's extremely rational. She's extremely capable of arguing very, very well and very logically with these people.
And here you have this very proud man, this Pierre Cauchon, and he's setting up these traps for her. And she's able to see through the traps instantly.
He tries to trap her into saying that she is already assured of her own salvation.
They asked her, "Do you think you are in the grace of God?" Which is a very frightening question, because if she says yes, she's guilty of arrogance. And if she says no, she's admitting she's a sinner. And in both cases, since it's a heresy trial, she's in trouble. She says this amazing thing.
If I am not, may God put me there. If I am, may God keep me there.
The jury begins to realize that she's quite a remarkable young woman.
Week after week, they interrogated her. And week after week, Joan held her ground.
What was the sign you gave to the king?
You shall not learn that from me. Go and ask him.
In public, Joan gives her best. Cochon sees this, and he's no dolt. He may be proud, but he's not stupid. So he decides to move the Inquisition to her cell. Now, this very public person is then confined to her cell.
She is questioned over and over again, day after day, about who her voices really are.
And it's clear that the trial pushes her to name them.
There's no evidence that she thought of them as anything but voices from God until she was tried.
You ask too much of me.
Only under repeated interrogations where they ask her who were the voices does she finally say they were Michael, Margaret, and Catherine.
The stories of these renowned saints mirrored Joan's life. Michel was France's guardian angel. Marguerite fought to defend her virginity. And Catherine was martyred for refusing to renounce her faith.
Then the interrogators go on to say, now what did they look like? Up to this point, she's only talked about voices. And now they're pushing her for physical details.
She says, oh, they had beautiful crowns on their heads with lots of jewels. It's sort of a young girl's idea of what they want to hear.
Saint Michel, was he naked?
Do you think that God has not the wherewithal to clothe him?
What you see Cochon did was try to wear her guard down bit by bit by bit.
They press her over and over again.
She's worn down by food poisoning, fatigue. There's the fear of torture.
They did everything conceivable to drive that young woman out of her mind.
Quel signe qui vint à votre roi?
She begins to tell them what they want to hear.
The sign was what the angel declared to my king, bringing him the crown. He entered by the door of the chamber. And when the angel came, I accompanied him.
This vision grows with time.
He stepped and moved along the ground as he came to the king.
It changes with time. Who is the angel? What is the crown?
Sire, there is your sign. Take it.
She was giving them what she thought they wanted to hear.
Voilà votre signe!
There is your sign. Take it.
After 3 months of relentless examination, Cochon decided he had gathered enough testimony to convict Joan of heresy. The bishop publicly proclaimed her crimes, many of them grave enough to condemn her to death.
Article 1. The voices are from the devil.
The church wants to be able to walk away with clean hands. They are trying to break her so that she will deny her voices. Then they can give her some kind of priestly absolution so that her soul will be saved.
You violate divine law with your men's clothing.
Whether or not her body is saved is really not the question to them.
It's not true.
You are an idolater.
To Joan, that is the question. Can I save my life?
It's not true!
Article 12. You are a schismatic.
C'est pas vrai!
Bishop Cochon had convicted Joan of heresy. Now he needed her to admit her guilt and condemn herself.
Cochon's tried every trick in the book. And the last thing left is to scare her half to death. And so he has a stake built.
Joan sees the stake and goes into shock, knows that her body is going to be burned on that stake.
Joan doesn't want to die.
She breaks and denies her voices.
She says, I would rather sign than burn.
We condemn you to prison for life, to the bread of pain, and the water of sorrow.
Now, you churchmen, take me to your prison. And let me be no longer in the hands of the English.
Je serai bonne et ferai ce que l'Église voudra.
I am content to do what you will have me do.
She's sent back to the same cell she was in before with the same guards. Not as the proud, defiant emissary of God, but as a repentant heretic who has given up what she's been fighting for.
In denying her voices, she has lost that power that she might have frightened or impressed people with before. She has now become a sexual target. She takes off the male clothing for the first time in all these many, many months. She now has to live with herself as a person who has denied her voices. She is now totally alone.
She didn't hear her voices. She really feels as though they've left her. She feels abandoned.
She regrets deeply what she's done. I should never have signed it.
The sign was what the angel declared to my king. So Marguerite, so Catherine, there is your sign, there is your sign. Take it. I am content. Do with me what you will. Content. Do with me what you will. God will help him. Accept it willingly. God will help him. God will help me. What I did was not well done. What I said for fear of the fire.
She realizes she's done the most horrible thing possible. And so she does everything to recant her own recantation. Not for them, because they didn't matter anymore. For the voices. For her.
C'était moi. I was the angel. And there was no other.
She certainly is assuming the same role that she had before, becoming the same Joan. The person that she had given up being for a couple of days.
She knew this meant that they would execute her.
When Cochon and the others come in, they find that she has put on the male clothing again. And she has reaffirmed her voices, and she accepts her death.
Of the church, he's not supposed to kill people, but inside he wants this. He wanted her all the way along. So he reads this condemnation.
Tel un chien qui retourne à son vomissement.
Like a dog that returns to its vomit, you have relapsed and returned to your heretical ways.
Because he cannot directly condemn her to death, he then says, we abandon you to the secular authorities.
À la justice séculière.
May they be merciful.
Alas, am I so horribly and cruelly used that my clean body, never defiled, must this day be burnt and turned to ashes?
Eh bien que je meurs par vous!
Bishop, I die through you!
Fearing Joan in death as much as in life, the English collected her ashes. To prevent my people from worshipping her relics, they scattered her ashes in the River Seine.
Joan's life was very, very influential, there's no doubt about it. But it's interesting to see the impact of her death on the closest around her. It's almost as if her presence was so powerful that her absence either left men filled to greatness or empty to defeat. D'Alençon becomes a wasted man. He cannot operate further.
After Joan's death, her Beau-Duc Alençon's loyalty to Charles faded. In 1440, he plotted against the king and spent the last 16 years of his life imprisoned for treason.
Some were spurred on to greatness. Ultimately, Charles VII is the victor in the 100 Years' War. I don't think he expected that in 1429.
And he would become Charles the Victorious instead of Charles the Loser.
But it was said all over Europe that Charles was on a throne thanks to a witch. And so he had to get the first trial nullified in order to demonstrate that this was not true.
Charles called for a new trial to remove the taint of heresy and restore his reputation. People from all stages of Joan's life came to testify in her defense.
Isabelle Romay, the mother of Joan of Arc, goes to Paris to appeal directly to the Grand Inquisitor to reverse the injustice done to her daughter.
I had a daughter who grew up amid the fields and pastures. She never thought, spoke, or did anything against the faith. The judges condemned her falsely. I demand that her name be restored.
The testimony at her rehabilitation trial was overwhelmingly in support of Joan and her mission. The church ruled that Bishop Cauchon had violated ecclesiastical law.
Bishop Cauchon was declared a heretic and excommunicated by the Grand Inquisitor of France.
Joan's mother got her wish. In 1456, Joan's conviction for heresy was officially overturned, and Joan of Arc was proclaimed a holy woman. Nearly 500 years later, in 1920, the church that had condemned her made her a saint. Joan's story remains an inspiration to anyone who believes in following your voice, even if it consumes you.